chapter. Luke chapter 23. Edgar, you want to close that door before you sit down? Luke chapter 23. Is Heather out of town, Michael? Okay. Heather's out of town. I guess the Martins are on their way, hopefully. Martins. Yep. It's good to see Jerry and Lynn and Briar here. Good to see all three of them. I was surprised when Briar walked in. I thought maybe, Briar, you'd come by yourself, but you brought them two with you, and that's a good thing. I'm glad you brought Mama and Papa with you. Seems like, let's see now. Talked to Bernice yesterday. They're doing okay. About as usual, they're doing okay. You're feeling better? Some. Burdell's been under the weather a little bit for the last week, probably. He went through the emergency room, I think, Friday night, and they said he had a bad sinus infection. They gave him some antibiotics, so he's doing some better.
I need to do some training with him. I pulled up and he just bailed in that truck and he looked around and said, "Who are y'all?"
Really? You stopped and he just crawled in. You shouldn't be riding with just anybody now. Pat's doing better. We're thankful for that. She's off of her walker. She's off of her lift chair. She's off of all the handicap stuff.
Did she start cooking already?
Well, we ain't that far along. She ain't started cooking yet. No, I don't think she'll ever be the same there.
Probably never be the same.
Any other sick that we need to mention? Anybody? Anything?
Ricky.
Yes, sir.
I got a friend. What's his name? Ivan Drawdy. I have a hard time with him. Ivan Drawdy. He's got a brain tumor. They took it out.
Okay.
And nothing come up on the other side. He's on his way to Galveston now. They took him to Lafayette. He's a young man. Just as fine. If you want to call a Baptist Christian, he's the best Baptist Christian you could ever be around. You know what I'm saying?
I understand.
Good man. The family needs prayers.
Yes. Ivan Drawdy.
Drawdy, yeah.
Okay. And that reminds me, our neighbor, Fred Langston, has been diagnosed with lung cancer. And he's going next week to see what they're going to do about that. They're going to have a CAT scan and all of it, a body scan, whatever it might be. But he's not in good shape. So remember, Fred, he's a good man, a good neighbor to Pat and myself. So remember him in your prayers also. Let's have a word of prayer. Father, we're so thankful that we're able to be here, and we're mindful of those who have just been mentioned who are not enjoying good health at all. But we ask your good help on the Drawdy man. We pray for Fred this morning, Father, that you bless them and help them. Do for them, Father, for whatever your will might be for them, but we pray that you would comfort them and their families. So thankful, Father, that we're able to make this assembly this morning. We pray your good help for us all. Bless our efforts as we discuss your word together this morning, that we might be able to measure ourselves by it, that we might examine ourselves, Father, that our faith might be as it should be. Bless us all, Father. Help us to live by your word. Forgive us all, Father, where we fail to do that. In the name of Christ we ask. Amen. Luke chapter 23. We'll begin this morning with verse 30. Last week we began with verse 26, where we saw that Simon of Cyrene had been forced to carry the cross of Jesus. Jesus apparently had stumbled under the load of this cross. Simon was forced to carry it out to the place of crucifixion. We saw that there was a great number of people following Jesus as he is led out there. Probably people who were curious, probably people who recognized that there's fixing to be a crucifixion, nosy people who wanted just to watch another crucifixion, possibly. But we saw from verse 27, there was a group of women who were weeping about the crucifixion of this man. Probably some of them knew who he was. Probably some of them women who were emotional at the loss of another human life, or weeping very, very, very much so over this man who's going to be crucified. Jesus turned to them and he addresses them as being the daughters of Jerusalem, women of Jerusalem, and he tells them, don't cry for me. Don't shed your tears for me, but you need to be crying for yourselves and crying for your children. Jesus here is predicting, prophesying a great calamity that's going to come upon this group of people. And I told you, I said last week that he's talking about, again, the destruction of Jerusalem here that's going to occur in some 35 to 40 years down the road in AD 70. He tells them in verse 29 that the days are coming in which you women who have children are going to look at women who don't have children, and you're going to think of them as being lucky. You folks are fortunate because you don't have children. Their children that they don't have are not going to go through this great calamity that's going to happen to these women and to their children. They're going to be shocked by what's going to happen. The Roman army is going to lay siege to the city of Jerusalem. They're going to be encircled, and I was going to look that up this morning, and I forgot again, Edgar, how long that siege lasted. But there was no food or water coming in. History tells us that some of them even resorted to eating their children. They were so hungry and so desperate. But notice verse 30. Before we want to begin this morning, let's read 30 and 31. Jesus continues to talk to this group of women. He says that then when that all happens, then shall they begin to say to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us up. For if they do these things in a green tree, what shall be done in the dry? The day is coming when this great calamity comes upon you women. You're going to begin to hope or cry, hoping that the mountains would just fall on us, so that we can get out of this dire situation that they're in. They're going to be hoped to be better off to be buried alive. And cover them up and hide them, and they can just die more quickly in this cave to get away from what's happening in the city of Jerusalem. But I said last week that he's describing here the destruction of Jerusalem. I've had denominational friends over the years. I haven't heard it lately. They think he's describing the coming of Christ again. And they've often told me, people, society today, when Christ comes again, they're going to be running around hoping that the rocks are going to fall on them and cover them up, and that may be. But I don't think that's what we're talking about here. And I asked you last week to notice Revelation chapter 6. Go with me, if you would, to Revelation chapter 6, and we're going to see here that John is going to use the same descriptive words about the mountains and the rocks falling on these people. And he's talking about the same situation. We're going to go to the Old Testament and see where the same phrases are used there. And notice what they're describing here. Revelation chapter 6. And by the way, Andy's teaching from Revelation on Wednesday night. He does a good job. Brenda, he's even taught me something, as old as I am and as dumb as I am. And he's taught me some things out of Revelation, and I do appreciate it, really. I've learned some things, and I appreciate Andy taking on that for us on Wednesday night. But notice Revelation chapter 6, verse 15. John here writes, he says, the kings of the earth, notice this, he's going to list everybody living. The kings of the earth, great men, the rich men, the mighty men, every bondman, every slave, every free person is going to hide themselves in the dens and the rocks of the mountains. And they're going to say to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. It seems like he's talking about hide us from the wrath of God who's sitting on the throne and from the Lamb of God, the Son of God, this wrath that's going to come upon us. We have seen countless times where God has used other nations, used other people to accomplish his will. And John here is writing about, again, the destruction of a group of people, God using a group of people to destroy another group of people so that his will might be brought about. Notice, if you would, go with me to, let me turn my page here, back to the Old Testament book of Isaiah. What we're going to notice here is Isaiah the prophet, also Hosea the prophet, is going to describe, going to use these same words, but they're talking about a nation coming over and destroying the Jewish nation. God often punished the Jewish nation because of their disobedience. And he used another nation to destroy, bring vengeance or destruction upon the Jewish nation. Isaiah chapter 2 and verse 19. Notice what Isaiah the prophet here says. He's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonian Empire. Babylonian Empire is going to come in and take over Jerusalem and destroy it. That's when these people are going to be taken into Babylonian captivity for some 70 years here. Notice what he says, Isaiah chapter 2 and verse 19, and they shall go into the holes of the rocks and into the caves of the earth, for fear of the Lord and for the glory of his majesty, when he arises to shake terribly the earth. And in that day shall a man cast his idols of silver and his golds of idols, which they made each one for himself to worship let me find my place again. Each one himself to worship to the moles and to the bats, to go to the clefts of the rocks and the tops of the ragged mountains, for the fear of the Lord and for the glory of his majesty, when he arises cheerfully to shake terribly to the earth. And I bungled all that up, but y'all read it for yourself. He's not talking about the Lord coming again and the Lord's going to destroy these people. The Lord is going to send someone in his place to punish the nation of Israel again. And in this instance, it's going to be the Babylonians this time. And they're going to run to the mountains. And they're going to hope that these mountains are going to fall on him. Notice Hosea. Hosea chapter 10 and verse 8. Hosea here is prophesying about the Samaria being destroyed by the Assyrians. Hosea chapter 10 and verse 8. The high places also of Aven, and Aven means idolatry. The nation of Israel had set up places of idolatry that they would go and worship at. And that's the sin of Israel, he says in verse 8. These shall be destroyed, the thorn and the thistle shall come upon their altars. The thorns and thistles and bushes and briars are going to take over these places of worship of idolatry. And those folks are going to say to the mountains, cover us, and to the hills, fall on us. That phrase there is often used to describe one nation, that God uses one nation to come over and punish the nation of Israel. And so as we go back to Luke chapter 23 here, Jesus is using that same description. That's what John used in Revelation chapter 6 there. Jerusalem is going to be destroyed by Rome in the year 70 AD. And so these folks are going to be wishing that they were dead, wishing that they could die quickly, because this siege of Jerusalem lasted, I want to say 3 years, but it was a long time. Enough time where these folks have become very desperate within the walls of Jerusalem there. Anyone have any comment?
Yes.
Go ahead.
You know, let me get my thoughts together.
Okay.
That falling on the rocks on them, that could be literal and spiritual.
Yes. Yes.
You go back to people in torment now, wish there wasn't there. In other words,
Yeah.
like the rich man in Luke 16 chapter, he just wanted a little drop of water.
Yeah.
Well, these people in flame and torment, they wish the rock could fall on them and cover them up and get rid of them.
That's true.
But I use it both ways up there.
And that's true. That's true. I think in the sense that we just looked at there from Isaiah and Hosea, these folks were actually wishing that physically they could run and hide somewhere. And if it takes the cave to falling in on me to protect me from these invading soldiers here, then good. That would be much better. Andy?
The point being made both in Isaiah and in Hosea as well as Revelation is the fact that there is no place to hide. Okay. There is no place to escape. God's wrath, God's will be done, and man cannot stop it.
Right.
You can hide from it, you can run from it, but you're not going to change it.
Mm-hmm.
Once that sentence has become handed down by God, there is no grace.
Mm-hmm. That's it. You know, when we discussed that 2 weeks ago, Wednesday night rather, Revelation chapter 6, I told him, and that was just tongue in cheek, I told the class, Andy, when the Lord comes again, if that's what we're talking about here, well, my plan is, if I'm here, I'm running out this door, Jerry, and I'm running down here in the swamp. I know where there's a hollow beech tree.
We're not going to re-argue Revelation 6. But Revelation 6 is not talking about the end of time.
Oh, I know.
It doesn't fit the rest of the context of Revelation. And in a moment between them and I, all things change. There's not going, at the end of time, there's not going to be time to hide. It's going to be accountability.
That is exactly right. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 52. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. Folks, I ain't going to have time to get out the door. Well, for us, run down here and find my hollered out beech tree, I'm going to hide in. Would it do me any good to hide anyway? So I could have time to get there.
You cannot hide from God.
No. These kings and the rich folks and the slaves and the free people back in Revelation chapter 6, they're going to run and hide in the cave. Are they going to have time to run and hide too? No.
The wrath of God is a great equator. It equates the poor man to the rich man.
Yes. Everybody's going to be in the same old boat. But he's talking about the destruction of the people by another group of people there. I ain't going to have time to run and hide and find me a cave and hope the cave's hidden on me, and now I'm hid from the Lord. No, that's not going to work. It's not going to take very long for judgment to come on every one of us. Notice verse 31 now. Going back to Luke chapter 23, verse 31. Jesus here seems to me that he takes a little bit different turn in his conversation as he talks to these women now who are crying. You know, he told them not to cry for me, but cry for yourself and for your children. Describe this great calamity that's going to come upon them, and we're going to discuss here in a little bit. Is there a great calamity awaiting us also today? That I wish that I could run and hide? Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But verse 31, notice what he tells them. For if they do these things in or to a green tree, what shall be done to a dry tree? What's he talking about there? Cornell?
If you do things in the public, what you going to do in the private? That's what he's trying to say there.
Okay.
If you do things in the public, what are you going to do when you're behind somebody's back?
Yeah.
That's the way I look at that now.
Okay. No, notice this. If they do this, let me change it, not in a green tree or to a green tree, what are they going to do to a dead tree? You know, a green tree is something that's living. Andy?
Go ahead.
Something that's living, something that produces some fruit. It doesn't matter if it's a hickory nut or an acorn or a peach or an apple off of a peach tree or an apple tree. It's living. It produces whatever fruit it's supposed to produce. It can even provide a shade of respite from the sun if it's hot. It's valuable to us. It's helpful to us. This green tree that's valuable to us, we need to keep it, preserve it if we possibly can. Edgar, sometimes when we got to build a house or something, we have to remove the trees, of course. But we're not going to run out and just cut down a green, producing, living green tree all of a sudden. The dry tree, it's useless. It's dead. It may have once produced fruit. It may have produced acorns one time or peaches at one time, whatever it was, but it's dead and it's dry. It ain't even got leaves on it no more. Just the dead branches are standing up there now. It's useless. Probably need to cut it down if it's near where you might be living, because it's going to fall on you or possibly sometime. It needs to just be cut down and burned. But here's the parallel to me, and I think Barnell's on the right track. We have here now Jesus. He's an innocent man that's been condemned to death. Jesus is the green tree. He's been found innocent. The civil laws of the Roman authorities have found him to be innocent. According to the old law, the law of Moses, he's innocent. Envy and jealousy and hatred for this man has become the standard of measurement now. He's a green tree. He's useful. You know, if an innocent man, if a green tree is treated this way, a useful tree, how's a dead tree going to be treated?
That's the unbelievers.
Sir?
That's the unbelievers. That's the ungodly.
Okay. Could I be a dead tree today?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Danny, I'm a believer.
If you're not producing fruit.
Okay. That's true.
If you're not producing fruit, what good are you?
That's true. I'm that dead tree.
You went down and cast it into the fire.
Pardon me?
You went down and cast it into the fire.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, it's not just an unbeliever. It could be me, because I occupy my pew here time after time, Jerry.
Talking about a green tree, then there's a decimal point there. Then it says in the dry. I think talking about the desert myself.
Okay, let me read it again. Why would they do this in a green tree?
Right.
Comma? Is that a comma or what? I guess what shall be done in the dry?
Where's dry? I think he's talking about the whole area. You know, he's describing the whole place to him.
Okay. Could be, but I'm not sure. I think he's showing a parallel between they're destroying something that's useful here. Was Jesus's life, was it useful to folks?
Yes.
Go with me to Acts chapter 10. We'll talk about Jerry, what Jerry just suggested there. And he may be true, Jerry. I never thought about it in that way. But Acts chapter 10, verse 38 and 39, this is the Apostle Peter in the house of Cornelius. He's talking to Cornelius and all those people that are there. Acts chapter 10, verse 38, he said that, God anointed Jesus of Nazareth with the Holy Spirit. He anointed him with power. Jesus of Nazareth, he was about doing good. He healed all that were oppressed of the devil, for God was with him. Verse 39, we're witnesses of all the things which he did, both in the land of the Jews and Jerusalem, whom they slew, and they hung him on a tree. He was a green producing fruit. He did good. He helped everybody that wherever he went. And yet they killed him and crucified him on a cross. He was a green, if they do this to a green tree, Jesus himself is saying, what's going to happen to the dry tree? Or the dry area around it, Jerry? Notice Luke chapter 7. Luke chapter 7, this is the account of John the Baptist. He's been in prison. He's fixing to have his head chopped off by Herod. But John is in prison. He's sending folks out to Jesus, to some messengers, and telling them to go out there and ask Jesus, are you really the Messiah? Tell us if you're really the Messiah, or should we start looking for the real Messiah if you're not the real Messiah? Just tell us that. That's why he sent messengers out there to ask Jesus. Notice verse 22. Luke chapter 7, verse 22. Jesus answered them. He said, go your way and tell John what things you've seen. Notice this. To tell John that the blind can see and the lame can walk. Tell John the lepers are cleansed and the deaf can hear. Tell John that the dead are raised, and to the poor the gospel is preached. Here we have a very good person who's helping a lot of people. He's a green tree. Let's cut him down and burn him on the brush pile. That's what I get out of this. They're going to destroy the one who's trying to help. But notice also on the other side of the coin, what's going to be done to the dead tree? And Jerry, to me, he's implying it's a tree. We've got a green tree that's living. Now we've got a dead tree that's not living. What are we going to do about the dead tree if they're going to do this to a green tree? What happened to the person who's dead? He does. Go ahead.
The dead tree represents the unbelieving Jew, the Jew that put him on Calvary.
Yeah.
Wasn't crucified.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I get out of it. Yes. But Jerry, you very well may be right. I don't know.
I can be wrong, too.
Oh no. Tara.
I was thinking about how they turned Barabbas loose.
Okay.
He was like the dead.
He was a dead tree, that's for sure. Yeah, that's true. We're going to talk about Barabbas here in just a few minutes. But yeah, these are unbelieving Christians. They're dead in sin. That it's a dead tree. It doesn't bear any fruit anymore. It's pretty much useless. It could have been fruit bearing, but it just simply died on the vine. Just died, turned up its roots and died. Maybe because of the drought of the dried area there, Jerry. But and that could apply also to those of us who are members of the church. Was at one time fruit bearing, but just sort of gave up on it. Just sort of died, and now we're not fruit bearing anymore. We're just standing there. And as I asked as I pointed out a while ago, that there's a fearful calamity coming for these folks here. That's going to be in the form of the destruction of Jerusalem. Is there a calamity coming for us if I'm a dead tree? Yeah. Yeah. If they did that to the best man that ever lived, what's going to happen to somebody like me? If I'm sort of half dead, half green, half dead, I can survive that way. I know I'm going to finally just die. We've got an old oak tree in our front yard that's in the process of dying, Edgar. It's still living, but it's dying. I can see that. Is it going to overcome its whatever disease it's got? No. It will eventually die. in another year or two, or maybe this year will be his last year. I'm not sure.
On the spiritual side, though, if you have a half-dead Christian, he can be restored. He can
be restored.
He can overcome. He can find forgiveness, and he can find life once again.
Mm-hmm. Notice that Hebrews chapter 10. You know, I think it's incumbent upon Andy the preacher, incumbent upon me the class teacher to just point out to us all, not just talking to Andy, but talking to myself too. We need to encourage each other, but we need to warn each other too. I might be half dead and don't even know it. If I am, I would appreciate you telling me, trying to show me, try to help me, but I don't want to end up a dead tree and cut down and cast into the fire. Hebrews chapter 10, notice verse 24. We're going to skip around here just a little bit. We'll make a little application here. We'll chase a rabbit. Verse 24, consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works. Jesus went about doing good works. He was a green tree. Consider one another, encourage one another to do good works. Andy, you're the preacher. You don't need encouraging the preacher now. You are our encourager.
That's incorrect.
What? As the preacher?
Yes.
You need encouragement?
Prayers.
Maybe we need another preacher.
Start looking.
Yeah. No. Is Andy human? Andy's human. Andy needs encouragement. I need encouragement. Everybody here needs encouragement. We need help.
Andy,
We need
you're
help.
doing a good job. You got your encouragement, brother.
Do I now?
I said, Andy, you're doing a good job.
Well, I know.
That's encouragement.
I know, and we need to encourage Andy. Well, we sometimes think he's the cheerleader, and he's here to encourage us. And he is. But I'm here, my job is to encourage him and to encourage everybody that's here. That's the job of everybody that's here. We all can't be teachers, we all can't be preachers, we all can't be elders and deacons and all these kinds of things. Every one of us can be an encourager. Everyone.
The best encouragement to a local work is participation.
Participation.
And that may come from picking up trash or fixing the tray or preaching the sermon or leading the scene or going to pick somebody up. Participation.
Yes.
Do something.
Just help.
Do something.
Help. The Hebrew writer here is going to give us an example. I know that everybody's tired of hearing this. I know that. But folks, as the class teacher, I don't want you to, I'm not going to stand in judgment and say, Ricky, I wish you would explain that to me. I didn't realize. I didn't do my job. The Hebrew writer here is going to give us an example of how we can or cannot be an encourager to other people. For example, verse 25, don't forsake the assembling of ourselves as a matter of some folks are. Don't do that. Does that encourage you, Andy? When people, how many will be here tonight? We can count them on two hands. We can count them on two hands. I realize there's folks here who can't make the assembly on Sunday night. I know that. We simply can't do it. Most of us can. Andy ain't coming tonight. You can get up there and you can preach to 6 or 8 if you want to. Do we realize that Andy makes the same effort to preach to Sunday night group as he makes to the Sunday morning group? Would it help Andy's feelings? As Andy told us before, it is discouraging to show up and there's a half a dozen here. We could all sit on the front two pews here. He told us to encourage one another to love and good works. And he gives us an example. Don't forsake the assembly as the matter of some folks do. But, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. Andy, I'll see you Sunday. Andy, I want to encourage you. I'll see you Sunday. Encourage one another as you see that day coming, the time coming. I'll see you. But notice, if we sin willfully, verse 26, encourage everybody, encourage one another, Don't forsake the assembly, as some folks will do. That's just what they do. But notice, that's an example of what not to do. But if we're going to sin willfully, after we know better, after we receive the knowledge of the truth, if we're going to sin willfully, you need to remember there remains no more sacrifice for our sins. The Lord has done everything that He's going to do. Look back to verse 10, Hebrews chapter 10. By the which will we are sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ one time. Verse 12, by this man Jesus Christ, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever. One time, that's it. Verse 14, for by one offering he hath perfected forever them that are sanctified. That's all He's going to do. That's it.
Why should He do more? Because He did the complete job the first time.
Do what now?
Why should we expect Him to do more?
Well, Andy, we're talking about me now. He's going to make an exception for me. You know He's going to make an exception for me. It's me we're talking about here. He ain't going to make no exception for me. No more than for anybody. We're all the same. He's given us an example here. But if I want to ignore that, remember, He ain't doing no more for you. Notice verse 30, for we know Him that hath said, vengeance belongs unto me. I will repay, saith the Lord. The Lord will judge His people. Verse 31, it's a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. If a green tree was crucified, the best man that ever lived, what's going to happen to me as a half-dead tree, or as a fully dead tree, or as a dying tree? And I'm just, I'm going to sort of do maybe what little I can, but as far as making a full effort toward it, that's what I get out of that. So hopefully nobody can say, Ricky, I wish you would have pointed that out to me and I could have realized what I was doing. If anybody's got another idea about that, and that applies to me. It applies to every one of us. We can, every one, be an encourager. You may not be able to teach the class or preach or lead the singing or be an elder or a deacon or whatever it might be, but every one of us can be an encourager to the preacher, to the song leader, to the class teacher, to each one. I think that's the reason that we need to meet as often as we can, because I draw encouragement from coming to the meeting place here. If it weren't for that, I don't know, they ain't no telling where I would be. Anyone have any comment?
Can I thank you for those comments and ask one question?
Sure.
The best improvement you can do for the preacher is asking, give him something to preach on. Give him what you want to hear.
Oh, okay.
Ask the question.
Yeah. And I'm sure, Eddie, that is a problem.
That's the hardest part of pulpit preaching.
What do I need to say this morning?
What I say this morning?
What am I going to say tonight? Yeah. I would imagine so.
I'm going to go preach 144,000 tonight.
We are going to do that tonight? Give us a preview of what's going to happen Wednesday night. I hope to be here. I've read that Revelation chapter 7 deals with 144,000. I've read it and reread it, and I ain't figured it out yet. I've read commentators, and they all got a different opinion. Mike, I don't know. Andy's going to tell us tonight. And he probably can. He does do a good job with Revelation.
I'm going to introduce it tonight.
Okay. Well, that'd be good. Maybe it'll help somebody like me. Notice verse 32. Going back to Luke chapter 23. Let's read 32, 33, and 34. And there were also two others, malefactors, led with him to be put to death. And when they were come to the place which is called Calvary, they were crucified. There they crucified Jesus and the malefactors, one on the right hand and another on the left. Then said Jesus, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And we'll just stop right there. Verse 30, there's two malefactors that's going to be crucified with this man Jesus. John chapter 18 and verse 30, Jesus was referred to by the Jews there as Jesus was a malefactor. Pilate asked them, well, why haven't you brought him to me? Well, Pilate, we wouldn't have brought him if he wasn't a malefactor. That's pretty much what they said. They gave him a little bit of a short answer. They called him a malefactor. A malefactor is an evil person. We don't use that term today. He was a criminal. He's a criminal. What does criminal, a criminal, that identifies who the criminal has done, what he's done. No. He's a murderer, he's a thief, he's a robber, he's a rapist, he's a whatever, he's a criminal. Jesus was identified as a criminal here. Notice 1 Peter chapter 4. I just stumbled over this. Really doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about here. But I was sort of surprised. Again, I learned a little something. Where is it at? Yeah. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 15. The Apostle Peter here is going to give us a list of criminals. He don't say criminals. He don't say malefactors. He just gives us a list of people who have done some bad things in their lives. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 15. Let none of you suffer as a murderer, there's a criminal, or as a thief, there's a criminal, or as an evildoer, there's a criminal. Notice this, or as a busybody. A criminal? Well, you know, Andy, you're laughing over there. A busybody is lumped with a murderer, or a thief, or an evildoer. I need to watch my mouth. I need to watch my mouth. Anybody ever noticed that? I hadn't, Harold. I'd never noticed that. A busybody is as bad off as a murderer. Don't be accused of being a murderer, or a thief, or an evildoer, or a busybody. Just threw that in for whatever it's worth. Anybody have any comment about that? These two malefactors, if we go back to Luke chapter 23, there were two others. Matthew chapter 27, verse 38, says that they were thieves. These folks were thieves. They'd stolen something, or maybe that's how they made their living, by stealing stuff. They had been condemned to death. I understand in the Middle East today, if you're a thief, you get your hand chopped off. In the United States, if you're a thief, well, you're getting patted on the back and tell you we'll see you later. Yeah, but at any rate, these two malefactors were thieves. They had been found guilty of stealing. They were guilty. One of the robbers on the cross is going to tell the other, we're guilty. We got to be here. We're supposed to be here. Probably, apparently, these two thieves had already been condemned before Jesus was condemned. They're fixing to crucify Jesus, and maybe it occurred to Pilate, remember we got them two thieves up over there? Take them two with him, we'll do three at once. Kill three birds with the same old rock. That they had been condemned before Jesus was condemned. They're waiting, apparently, their crucifixion. We're fixing to crucify this man Jesus because they want to get rid of him right now. Take them other two with him. Remember Barabbas? Barabbas was a murderer. I'm not sure that there was any association between these two thieves and Barabbas the murderer, but Jesus took Barabbas' place. Barabbas had probably been condemned for murder. Maybe those three were going to go together, but Jesus took Barabbas' place, and so we're going to we'll get rid of all three of them at one time and be through with the crucifixions, maybe for today or for this week or for this month, whatever it might have been. But this was prophesied by Jesus, Isaiah 53 and verse 12, or by Isaiah rather, that Jesus was numbered with transgressors. These were two thieves. They had transgressed the law. They had stolen, and Jesus is going to be lumped in with these folks. Back up to Luke chapter 22, verse 37. Jesus is going to cite Isaiah chapter 53 and verse 12. Luke chapter 22, verse 37, Jesus speaking here, for I say unto you that this that is written must yet be accomplished in me. And he was reckoned among the transgressors. And notice what Jesus said, for the things concerning me have to have an end. This has to be accomplished. This has to be done. Jesus is going to be lumped in together with two common thieves, two others who were malefactors. And Jesus, of course, has been accused of being a criminal himself. This green tree of Jesus, who went about doing good, is considered and lumped in with two thieves. Anyone have any comment? Notice verse 33. And when they were come to the place which is called Calvary, there they crucified him and the malefactor, one on his right hand and the other on his left hand. They got to the place of crucifixion. The Latin phrase, the Latin name for it is Calvary. Sometimes it's referred to as the place of the skull. That's the Aramaic name for it. Golgotha is the Hebrew name for it. They're all one in the same thing. It's simply the place where routine crucifixions are carried out. And we're going to see here in a minute that it apparently was pretty close to a roadway that people traveled up and down. Is it going to be outside the city of, outside the walls of the city of Jerusalem? We know that. And it's apparently going to be right beside a place where people can actually see. Well, we're having a crucifixion today. We got 3 of them hanging up out there today. For a pretty common occurrence, apparently. You know, Pilate didn't seem like he had any reservations about carrying out crucifixions on Jewish holidays. And there might have been a reason for that. You know, Jerusalem is filled with Jews who have come to observe the Passover feast. And the Passover feast had been accomplished. We saw that Simon of Cyrene, he's going home back to the area of Libya, northern Africa now. That's when he was grabbed and told to haul the cross for Jesus. But we're starting on the 7 days of unleavened bread now, which follows the Passover feast. Still a Jewish holiday. They were not to eat any leaven for 7 days. Pilate's got all these Jews in Jerusalem for this feast. They're jam-packed with Jews, and maybe Pilate's going to make an example, give an example to all these Jews here. See them folks, there 3 folks hanging out there? Behave while you're in town, because it could be you next. I'm not sure that that's what he's doing, but he didn't have any qualms about carrying out a crucifixion during a Jewish holiday. He's impressing upon the Jews, submit to the Roman rule, behave yourselves while you're here. There was always common little insurrections in Jerusalem. You know, a big mob of people together that share a common problem, and they're going to discuss their problems together, the occupation of the Romans, and some problems might occur. But Mark chapter 15, verse 29 says that they that passed by could see those 3 hanging on the cross there. They're wagging their heads and, in disgust. And, I think that's the guy who claimed to be the Son of God. There he is in the middle, that type of thing. But it was a place where a lot of people could see Jesus crucified. There they crucified Jesus. Let me make this point before. They nailed him to his wooden cross. Does the New Testament tell us that he was nailed to the cross? It's in Matthew 27. No, it's not. It indicates that he was nailed to the cross. No, I'd never noticed this. John chapter 20 and verse 25. Doubting Thomas was not there when Jesus first appeared to the other apostles. Thomas shows up, they tell him, we've seen the Christ. Well, I ain't believing that. Verse 25. The other disciples therefore said to Thomas, we've seen the Lord. But he said unto them, except I see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, thrust my hand in the side, I will not believe. That's the only reference to Jesus being nailed to the cross. Edgar, I would say Matthew 27, Mark chapter 15, John chapter 19. Andy, are you hunting?
It doesn't say he was nailed to the cross, but it had to be implied he was nailed to the cross.
Well, it was right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only reference to him being nailed to the cross. And that doesn't matter, but I just, as that thought crossed my mind, I think, well, yeah, it says he, they nailed him to the cross. Well, John, Doubting Thomas said, yeah, but we did, because I want to see the holes in his hand. I know they nailed him to the cross, but that's the only reference to him being nailed to the cross. But anyway, that's not worth anything. The first execution, the first crucifixion occurred in Genesis chapter 40. Genesis chapter 40, we won't go there, verse 19. Joseph is in prison. The baker and the butler are in prison. They both have a dream. Joseph interprets the dream. He tells the butler, you're going to get your job back. Good news for you, baker. Not good news for you. In 3 days, those 3 loaves of bread that you saw, 3 days, Herod is going to hang you on a tree. Hang you on a tree. And we notice from Acts chapter 5 and verse 30 and Acts chapter 10 and verse 39, Jesus was referred to as having hung on a tree. He wasn't hung as we see on Gunsmoke. He was hung by being nailed to that cross. So this is a very common type of execution that was used apparently for a long time. There were 2 forms of that being hung on the cross. One form is that they're tied by their hands to the cross, so that's a much slower death. no nails, tied up there, and as they hang there for 2 or 3 days, and the body, their weight gets more heavy, and they can't breathe anymore. Their breath gets shorter because of the compression on their chest. That takes a longer time to die that way. Jesus was nailed to the cross, and of course his death occurred much earlier than someone who was simply tied to the cross. Anyone have any comment?
Sometimes.
Go ahead.
Sometimes I let my imagination run away with me.
Well, I do too.
You know, I kind of think sometimes, this is my thinking, that they went out and just cut a tree down and knocked the branches off and didn't really dress it up, make it peel it and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Them spurs sticking out that tree into Jesus' back and arm.
Yeah.
You know, that could have been part of his crucifixion.
Yes.
The pain that he went through.
Yes.
Those sharp limbs just sticking in your back, you couldn't move. You know, I wonder about that sometimes.
Yeah, I wondered that too. Is it like a man-made cross that we see in the picture all the time? May not have been that. It may have been the trunk of a tree that had 2 pretty good limbs on it, and just use that for the cross.
Yeah, they're gonna say he's gonna suffer. He's gonna suffer anyway, but why clean something up for?
Yeah, that's true.
Make it look pretty.
That's true. Notice verse 34 for next week. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. If that had been me, am I going to pray that, Lord, forgive them? I've got nails in my hands. I'm hurting. Father, forgive them, because they don't know what they're doing. And we're going to see that the apostles even told those people later that through ignorance you people did that.
That's what I want you to explain. They didn't know what they were doing.
Okay? Well, the apostle twice told the people later.
I think that goes back. They don't know who they killed. It ain't what
they don't know who
what
they
they
killed.
were doing, but they don't know whom they killed.
They didn't know who was on the cross.
No.
They didn't. But more important, the Jews could care less.
No, they didn't care.
The Jewish soldier, that's a Jew. I'm gonna kill him.
Well, the Roman soldier drove the nail. He's just doing his job.
I mean, he just under commandment to go hang this man.
Yeah. Yeah.
He don't care. He don't care if it's Jesus or John or Fred or Sally or
But some of them knew that they were killing an innocent man. Some of them knew that.
Yeah, they knew that, and even when they had Pentecost.
Yes.
They were cut in the heart when they realized, look what we've done.
Yeah.
But the audience on Pentecost was the Jews, not the Romans.
Yeah. Notice Acts chapter 3, just as a preview for next week. I want y'all to look at this for next week. Father, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. Acts chapter 3, verse 17. And now, brethren, I want that through ignorance you did it, as did also your rulers. You did it ignorantly. And he's talking about, back in verse 13, you denied him in the presence of Pilate and were determined to let him go, and you denied the Holy One and the just, and desired a murder to be granted unto you. And now, brethren, I think that through ignorance you did it. I'm going to claim ignorance. On the day of judgment, Andy, I'm claiming ignorance.
If that be true, let's shoot every preacher and lock every church door and burn every Bible that exists.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. That's what I'm saying. And Jesus is praying. These people don't know what they're doing. Father, forgive them.
But at one time, God went to ignorance and man has all been able to repent.
Acts chapter
I
17.
understand what you said, Andy, about locking the church doors and burning the Bibles. We read this Bible and they still so many people lost are reading it, going in the opposite direction.
Amen.
Well, Jerry, you don't think I can plead ignorance?
Yeah.
Will it work?
That's no excuse.
Huh?
That's no excuse.
Why don't you try that next time that you get stopped doing 70 down there on the highway?
Right.
Get out and tell that state trooper, sir, I didn't know it was 55 mile speed limit. See how fast you tear that ticket look up.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can get by with it, with man. Not with God, I don't think.
Okay, y'all look at that for next week. We'll discuss that. See how it applies to us today. You know, if they can get away with literally crucifying him, there's got to be a way out for me. You know.
They didn't get away with it.
Oh, they didn't? Okay. All right, thank y'all for your help this morning.